So I'm going to start us out today and just say welcome to everyone. My name is Carol Peters, and I serve as the CEO of United Way Next. We are the alumni network, and we're so pleased to have all of you here. Our members are made up of retirees, alumni, current staff, and local United Ways. And we couldn't do what we do without our amazing volunteers, our members who actually are supporting the efforts today. I am going to turn it over here in just a minute to Denise Fleckenstein, who serves as one of our facilitators for our planned giving learning sessions. And I just want to give a shout out to every single volunteer through United Way Next that makes all of these professional development and learning sessions possible. Again, as I said, we would not be able to do what we do without their help and deployment across the network as mentors for local United Ways. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Denise.
Thank you, Carol. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an absolutely beautiful day in Michigan, where I hail from. And I served as the Director of Planned Giving for United Way for Southeastern Michigan for 12 years before retiring. And then I found United Way Next to keep serving and helping the network. And Dan Dunne is my colleague in facilitating as well. Dan's been doing a great job. And Dan, if you just want to say a couple things.
I want to say hi to everyone. Thank you for participating. I see Maggie McDonald from my old United Way in Greensboro, or Birmingham, Alabama. I've been in Greensboro, North Carolina, Asheville, which has taken a beating with the hurricane, and Jacksonville, Florida. Appreciate your time and your work advancing the mission of United Way. I've spent many years working for United Way, enjoyed the work and enjoyed the mission, and wonderful people to work with. So thank you for what you do in your local United Way.
Thank you, Dan. Well, today we have a treat for everyone and a very relevant topic that is going to be discussed by our presenters, Rochelle Zeidman and Jeff Stec. We are really grateful to have them do this presentation today. And it's overcoming objections to starting a planned giving program. And believe me, everybody deals with this. Doesn't matter what size of an organization you come from. We've all experienced different kinds of objections to different things we want to do. So this is just a real relevant topic for the discussion today. And now I'd like to turn it over to Rochelle and Jeff.
Well, thank you so much. First, I want to thank you, Denise and Dan Dunne, Carol Peters, and really our special guest today, Maggie McDonald. And Maggie is VP of Legacy Gifts at United Way of Central Alabama, which really has one of the best PQ programs in the nation. And so we're thrilled she'll provide her insights and great tips for starting a planned giving program. And we want to thank the audience really for attending and participating, because we know this is a busy time of year for everyone. And we're really excited. We're excited to be here because we share the same values. We want to really empower and grow communities. And so we're delighted to be part of this session. I'm going to just share a little about my background and then turn it over to Jeff, my co-presenter. And my background is I was at United Way Worldwide as Director of U.S. and International Giving. So I'm an alum, a proud alum of the system. And I had the great honor of working with Joyce Wilbur at John James Vanderklok, and really having my eyes opened with members of the $1 Million Roundtable and other volunteers who give so generously of their time and resources and really do an amazing job. I also was executive director at NPR of individual giving and double plan gifts there. And then worked at the American National Red Cross for 14 years. And then that led to also working as managing director at the CFP board. Now I'm consulting and thrilled to be part of the United Way Next network. Jeff?
Okay, I'm Jeffrey Stec. Really just have two qualifications for being here. I practiced law for about 10 years, did not do trust and estates, which was a mistake, it turns out, since I did not like practicing law, but I got did tremendously well in estate planning in law school. Took several courses in estate planning and tax. Of course, I went into litigation, which I still don't, one of those life-changing decisions for the worse. Got out of that and went to the United Way of Greater Cincinnati and did the plan giving program there, started the plan giving program there. And so I went to all kinds of seminars and NCPG, national conference, had Ed John come to Cincinnati. It was overwhelming to think about how to start a plan giving program. So I had to just keep boiling it down, boiling it down, boiling it down. And eventually it just struck me that it's just fundraising. And that means making calls. And I know Dan said, I visited Birmingham at some point back in 2001, Dan, and met with you briefly, but I can't remember who your VP of fundraising was. And she said, you just got to make the calls, with her very sweet Southern accent. You just got to make the calls. Something clicked. And so when Rochelle and I were talking about this, I had told her I created for the local Plan Giving Council a course called Plan Giving on the Run, because folks on the board kept saying, we have X number of members, 150 members, yet there are whatever, 10,000 human service organizations in Greater Cincinnati. Why are there so few people that are working on legacy giving? And I said, well, because it's too complicated. When you talk to the universities about how to do plan giving, I can't remember what the woman's name was. It was a 3-volume book, sequence, like massive. No wonder people don't want to do it. We scare them about, you got to know what a flip unit trust is, or else you better not open your mouth. So I said, we need to create a course, and they're still teaching it now, called Plan Giving on the Run, for people who just want to do it on the run. I don't have time to do it. So how do I do the minimum possible, but just to keep it going, get it going and keep it going? And so Carol in United Way Next offers fantastic classes, all soup to nuts, everything you could possibly need to know about plan giving. They're tremendous classes. My sense is, and why we did this, was that people leave that more afraid and less likely to start a program because they feel overwhelmed. So this is kind of you don't have to be afraid. We're going to dumb it down so that you can just get started, sort of plan giving for dummies, just step one, and then just do step one for a year. That's it. And so maybe it'll get them over the hump and get them over that sort of that terror, that paralyzing terror of the gigantic to-do list. So let's start sharing our, right? We're sharing our PowerPoint now. Rochelle, is that, I think that's where we're at.
Yeah, that's great. And we're going to also encourage you to participate, because we obviously want to hear other questions and hear from you. So thank you.
Okay, Rochelle, you want to give us the challenge?
Yeah, so challenge one basically was something that we hear, and actually we ourselves say, bandwidth. My gosh, I have competing priorities. I have no time. I have no staff capacity to do this. And plus, I really can't do everything. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed. Not going to happen. Don't add plan giving. Not happening. So that's the first challenge that we hear very often about starting a plan giving program.
Yeah, and the basic answer here is, like I said, it's just fundraising. And I think that the simplest thing to say is about what does that mean in practice is just add plan giving to what you already do. So the people that you're calling on in person, particularly leadership givers, Tocqueville givers, anybody giving more than Tocqueville, anybody that's been giving for years and years and years, which might not always get a visit, but plan giving is an excellent excuse to make a visit. But however it is that you're in front of somebody, folks have this fear that bringing up plan giving is a bad thing. And there's two answers to that. One, it can be super simple. hey, you've been given for a long time, you've been very generous, just consider adding United Way to your will or estate plan. That's it. Now you have a plan giving program. If you say that 10 seconds to every leadership donor every single year, every time you meet with them, you will get, I don't know what the multiplier would be. Dan, do you have any thoughts? You've done this long enough. Just doing that, make up a number based on your intuition. What percentage increase would you get in bequests if forever, in every visit during the campaign with the leadership donor, you said, remember United Way in your will or estate plan?
I'd be happy with 10%.
10%, right.
Yeah.
Is that an average of 40
I know
or 50,000 each? Yeah, right. So just bam.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
And start rolling in. Then you could actually use a plan giving that topic to say, what are you going to talk about every year? I mean, I remember in the strategy meetings during the campaign, I was like, oh God, what are we going to talk about? Well, we have needs and we need your money. Well, what a great pivot to say, hey, you've been giving for a long time and you're, of an age, 45, 50, 60, whatever that age is. You give a lot of things. You're a community leader. What do you think of your legacy in this community? What does that mean to you? How does United Way and human services fit into your legacy? Let's talk about your life and your leadership of this community. That is an easy subject to broach. And it gets people feeling as deeply as they possibly can about their life's purpose and United Way's place in it. So it's not only, it can be short to talk about plan giving or very resonant to ask people about plan giving. And so just don't be afraid to bring up plan giving. And it's just a great way, and we'll get to a little bit later, to enhance your annual calls, not detract from them. So that's the first thing. One is just talk about it on your visits. And two, you might have to put a page on your website that says, we take plan gifts, here's the bequest language, talk to your advisor about ways that you can save taxes or increase your income using plan giving in your estate plan, period. That's it. You can copy and paste that from any United Way in the country. I know United Way Next has that language. Then you're done. You got to have something for somebody to refer back to. So that's simple, half an hour. The only other thing, and these are little things you could start adding, maybe you add a tagline to your president's letterhead that says at the bottom, remember United Way in your estate plan, or leave a bequest for United Way. Maybe you send out one letter a year from the board chair or the president saying, hey, think United Way in the future. You put a little insert in it. Maybe you send a social media post out. But that's all small stuff, little stuff, very little time. And then as long as you're consistent with talking to people about plan giving when you're in the room with them, and then just doing those little things with the marketing, and you do that year after year after year, you've got a plan giving program, and Dan guarantees a 10% increase in your legacy giving over time. What do you think about that, Rochelle?
Yeah, I think it sounds great, Jeff. I would add just one point too, that it's really, as you had said, it's deepening the relationship with the donor anyway. So it's going to help your fundraising overall. And it's almost, I heard this phrase yesterday, and I'm going to quote it, it's generous listening too, because you're really spending the time to get to know them in this deeper way in terms of their interest in the community, what they think is making a difference. And they already think that your local United Way is making a significant difference. And so I think this kind of language, as Jeff's saying, is going to appeal to them.
Okay, what do you think? And just, I want to remember, if you guys have questions, of course, Maggie's going to talk and sort of fill in some gaps about what she thinks is important, sort of that minimum viable program might be another way to say this. But if you've got things that, like, it just strikes me, well, what if the board says we don't have well, let me ask you that, Rochelle. What if the board says there's no bandwidth? What if the staff says, well, let's start with the board. What if the board says there's no bandwidth, Rochelle? What do you say to that?
Well, I think that within the board, as my experience has been, and I work very closely with the board at the American Red Cross, is there are going to be champions of planned gifts anyway, because they're so committed. And bandwidth wise, I think if you explain it in the way that you just did, Jeff, I don't think it's going to be an issue, because it's really part of the conversation. And we can move on to challenge 2 and talk more about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Jeff, do you want to go over the challenge?
sure. Yeah, I'll cover the challenge. So, as I mentioned earlier, universities who really, I think, founded NC National Conference on Planned Giving, which I know is a different name now. It's all about the technical expertise. Most planned giving courses, they spend the bulk of the time reviewing all of the different tax vehicles, giving vehicles, trusts, CRUTs, CRATs, annuities, and all the technical things that if you have a gift annuity program, how do you get an insurance program, right? There's just a lot of technical stuff. The person that got me into planned giving, I practiced law for about 10 years and wasn't liking the litigation. And a really good friend of mine had been doing planned giving exclusively at Children's Hospital here in Cincinnati, really big, high esteemed Children's Hospital, $1 billion endowment. All she did was planned giving. And I'd known her for probably 10 years. And she said, Jeff, I've never once talked taxes with a donor, and I raise millions a year in planned gifts. This is when I was struggling with all. She said, never. I never talked to them about that. She said, I just need to know that you can save some taxes, you can save some capital gains tax, you save some income taxes. You can increase your income depending on what your investment portfolio is, but your donor knows all of that. Why don't you tell me about what's in your heart? About why why have you volunteered for United Way for every year for 20? Why have you given for what's your legacy going to look like? So you just don't need to know all of the legal and tax implications to have the real fundraising conversation with the donor. And when she said that, that's actually was the crystallizing moment for me, that planned giving did not have to be hard, because you'll hear from, oh God, one of the things I wrote down, we didn't put in here, don't let a lawyer tell you that you have to have gift policies before you can do planned giving. Because every organization on the planet already has a planned giving program the second somebody sends in a random bequest. You're already getting them. You don't need gift policies to take bequests. The board just deals with them. And if a donor says, well, what are your gift policies? Well, right now, we don't get that many planned gifts because we haven't been focusing on them. It's a board decision, case by case. Some years we need to spend it right now because, like during the pandemic, needs were huge. Other years we put it aside in basically a savings account for other years. So it depends, but over time, we're going to make sure as we ramp up this program, we're going to get gift policies together. You don't have to have those things done either, but the lawyers and all the financial advisors and technical people want to make sure that you're, let me put it this way, they worry about what their job is and they foist it on you that your job should include competence in their job. And you just don't have to do that. Your fundraisers start talking to people. Rochelle, what did I miss there? Or did I overstate anything?
Well, I think the great news is that 80% of planned gifts are bequests. So people are basically saying, I'm, delighted to give you X% of my estate or X dollars. So it's really very important to keep it in perspective. So 20% are a little more complex, or 10% are simple, like beneficiary designations for insurance, retirement plans, that kind of thing. But as Jeff said earlier, and many of you already do, there can be information on the website, on your website, in terms of simple suggested language for a bequest if you want to take that step. Use technology to your advantage that way. And other local United Ways have great resources as well. So I think that really we're trying to look at this in what's the simple approach, if you will, in terms of getting money into the organization. And the average bequest. I mean, some organizations are getting $50,000, some are getting 80, some, or 10, whatever, but it's certainly money from an individual's estate. So it's awesome.
Yeah, the last I saw was 50,000, but I'm not sure if that's right anymore. It was 40 when I was doing this in the early 2000s, so my guess is it's significantly more. Rochelle, do you want to talk about challenge 3? And again, Maggie's going to bring her own challenges that she can address, and we want you guys to bring your challenges. We're going to leave a bunch of room at the end for your challenges, but what do you think about this cannibalizing?
Yeah, the challenge 3, which we hear a lot of, and which, is a real concern, is the cannibalizing. Well, if I talk about planned giving, what's going to happen to the annual campaign gift? What about the immediate needs, and what is someone going to do? Are they going to take a smaller gift then in their annual campaign gift? What's going to happen? And I think Jeff and I were talking about how really this conversation really deepens the relationship, and it is not a distraction. And in fact, when people make a planned gift, they also often increase their annual giving. So it's a net plus in that way. So the benefits really are fabulous for the United Way. And so that's another reason why we really think this challenge can be overcome. Jeff, do you want to add anything there?
Yeah, the data shows that planned givers give more annually after they make a planned gift. They're more invested in the organization, so they want to keep giving. And anecdotally, I was coaching, doing a little bit of fundraising, but mostly coaching the Cincinnati State Foundation, local community college here that's been around a long time. It's big, but they had never done planned giving. They came up to 50 years, so they said, "Hey, we need to talk to our retirees and whatnot." And so, what we experienced over the course of about 3 years is literally people that made they endowed a scholarship. They started pouring more into the endowed scholarship fund than they were giving annually, and they increased their annual gift at the same time. They did both. Every single one of them kept putting money in the endowment and increased their annual gift. Both. And so it's just sort of magical that I just saw happen in front of me what the data shows happens. And so, like you said, Rochelle, it's the relationship is what matters. And legacy giving, the whole idea of legacy, your life's purpose, your money's going to live on and benefit your family for generations. It's going to benefit your church, a lot of people's alma maters. What else? We sir, ma'am, I know you give to the arts, you've been giving to us. Like, just talk about the big picture, and it just changes everything. And so there's very little cannibalizing that happens. We didn't see any of it at United Way in the 6 years that I was there. I think that covers that, but I think this is probably a good time, 4:30. Maggie, I hope we've left you some time. If you could take about 10, 12 minutes. What are the challenges that let me say, objections that people have? Now, it could be your board, could be your staff, because I know, people report to you. What are their objections and fears? What are those sort of paralysis moments that they have? And how do you get people over that hump so they are inspired to dive into planned giving?
You bet. First, I have to admit, this is a little bit of a fangirl moment right now because Dan Dunne actually hired me for my first job. We all remember the person that hired us, took a chance on us. It's his fault that I'm here, and it is truly an honor to carry on his legacy because he got our planned giving program started in what the young kids say, the 1900s these days. He's been doing this for a long time, and there were decisions made early on that really set us up for success. I want to talk about those. And Dan, you can correct me if I don't have the story right, but it's technically folklore at this point, so let's just roll with it. I got here. My first job was at United Way. I went on to raise money for other organizations. I came back to United Way 7 years ago and have been in the legacy gifts department ever since. And when I got back here, what I found was a really nice, strongly built 1940s English Tudor home that just hasn't had the updates in a while. Really good bones, but needed some new appliances and a fresh coat of paint. So having those bones in place has been important. The first, I would say, which I think reflects what you guys have presented already, the first was the decision to have board buy-in. The board has to buy into this. The decision was made that not only would this be a priority for the board, we actually have a seat, an appointed position on our board that is our legacy gifts chair, and that person also sits at our executive committee table. So that just places Plan Giving as a priority. It's also at really at any level of decision making, there's a voice for Plan Giving at that table. And I'm fortunate enough to, in the past 7 years, have worked with, I'm now on my third Plan Giving chair, and they make me better at what I do. They are all in. They get me excited about doing my job. So having volunteer buy-in is important. And to the volunteers on the call, your buy-in matters the most. At the end of the day, it matters the most and your voice matters. The second thing that was in place is we have dedicated staff. And I know that sounds scary because it's a financial investment. I'm here to tell you that I think it's extremely valuable to have Plan Giving as the #1 priority of a staff person on your team, if that is at all possible. If it's not possible, make it a significant priority of the gift officer. Having that be their priority, it's going to push your program forward. And it'll have somebody on the inside that is paying attention to it 24/7. We have actually 2 staff positions that are dedicated to Plan Giving, and our fundraising staff is about 30 people. So it's not a huge lift as far as staff. We are very busy. I'm not going to lie. I probably need 1.5 more people to do what I need to do next. But in the meantime, for 2 people out of 30 to manage what we are doing and to paving the way for the future is definitely worth the consideration. Those 2 are significant. The third, and I've heard it said in the chat as well, things you don't really need are all of the complicated stuff. You don't need big brochures. You don't need case statements. It's not that type of fundraising. This is our brochure. It's bookmarked.
Yeah.
That's it. This is the only thing we have used in the first 3 years of a 5-year campaign. We're in the middle of an anniversary campaign to raise our endowment. And we've gone from, I'm looking at the numbers right now. We started at 66.8 million in actual and expectant gifts. And as of today, we're at 102.6 million. This is what we invested in. You don't need a lot of fancy stuff. You just have to get out there and make the calls.
Yeah.
From some other challenges that I think that I've heard other people talk about. Yes, go ahead. Please ask questions.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment and then not challenge you, but sort of spin something. So having the legacy chair or volunteer, that's a having 1 volunteer is a small step, but the increase in your capacity to do Plan Giving is geometrically increased when you have 1 passionate volunteer.
Yes.
So it's a small step that unleashes a lot of things. And then one thing, when people hear, just in the spirit of today, because you're totally right, I was a dedicated Plan Giving staff person, so it's important.
Right.
24/7, that's all I thought about. That scares the hell out of small United Ways that couldn't ever possibly afford that. So in other contexts, having a staff, a frontline staff champion, because you've always got an all-star, that's working with, companies and doing your normal annual campaign stuff, but somebody who's just like, oh my God, that makes sense. I'll do that. They can talk to anybody about anything. They're eventually going to be the vice president of plan or vice president of fundraising somewhere. Get them to be the champion. Get them to be the advanced guard. And then what works to change the culture to make it more of an accepting, because annual campaign staff will often resist wholesale and talk about it behind your back, right? But if you just get that one mole who's passionate, their passion and their experience, like, oh my God, plan giving is the easiest thing to talk about. Plan giving helped get me a bigger annual gift. Plan giving is great. That spreads peer to peer. Cultures change peer to peer. And so that's just so that if, say, they can't hire a full-time staff champion, you can get somebody that could be a part-time champion. So I just wanted to throw that in there, but thank you very much for letting me jump in.
I agree, Jeffrey. I also, to piggyback on that, I would say, and I think somebody mentioned in the earlier comments that plan giving seems very intimidating because we talk about things like grats, and things that don't make a whole lot of sense. I frame that as I sound really, really intelligent because I'm put in a role that I'm responsible for talking about these things. The way I talk about them is, let's begin with the end in mind. Talk to me about what you'd like to do, how you foresee your gifts going, and let's talk about what you have at your fingertips that you can utilize to fulfill that gift. You don't have to have a whole lot of knowledge. You just have to have enough knowledge to be dangerous. But I do think that from a staff perspective, it's a great opportunity to give your rock star staff experience in another area of fundraising, because giving positions are really hard to hire for. Yeah. You don't have a lot of opportunity to have experience with it. So it actually gives them the opportunity to be a better gift officer as a whole, and the type of people that I want to hire.
That's a great insight. It's a great career development. It moves them in, because I've often said, I didn't make this up. You have to have a great major giving program before you can have a great plan giving program, right? It's all stair-stepped relationships, and this gets them into that relational space.
Yep. One other challenge that I wanted to bring up that's it's more of a challenge that I think has permeated our program since the beginning, and we've touched on it a little bit, and it's that misnomer that a plan giving program is going to cannibalize your annual campaign. The only way that happens is when you don't have somebody paying attention to plan giving while an annual campaign is going on. If you don't have people making those asks, then your plan giving program is never going to succeed. So that's key number one. One of the things that has been a big hurdle that we have had to overcome for a lot of reasons. The first being our TOEFL program is enormous, and it is culture in our community that being a member of the TOEFL Society is important and a big deal. So our TOEFL program, we don't want to do anything to get in the way of that TOEFL program being successful. That TOEFL program also is annual, so it has annual volunteers. So that changes every single year. So ultimately, if you don't have that buy-in from the top, you have that same objection every single year that you've got to get over. This year was the first year that we really stepped out there, and it was thanks to that volunteer that sits at the table, my champion. His name is Jeff Stone, and he is just an extraordinary man. And I want to give you guys a stat that I think will help, and I'm happy to put it in the chat and you can use it as a real world example. This has happened since July. We make about 150 calls, our TOEFL team, in this summer that are renewal calls for our donors who give $25,000 or more a year. These are thank you calls. They are the fun calls for volunteers to make. And our chair took 70 of those calls this year. He said, I'm going to call them and I'm going to make the dual ask. I'm going to ask them to renew their gift and to consider a planned gift. And you know what happened? 100% of them renewed their annual gift. 100%. And about 70% of them were open to a follow-up call about a planned gift. So that populated our planned giving pipeline but it absolutely is a perfect example of it does not cannibalize. And these are our top donors. We were pumped. I'm not going to lie. I will shout that stat to the rooftop. So that's just an example. If you do have that objection, the stats out there say, you know, if you make a plain gift, you're more likely to increase your annual giving. Sure, that's a stat. You're going to see it in an article. This is a real world example in Birmingham, Alabama. So at a United Way.
You know what?
Fantastic.
You know what strikes me, Maggie, is I think a way we could, if we did this program again, part of it is still, these are the things you like, don't get all hung up on gift policies, right? Just, you'll figure that out.
Ask me for my gift acceptance policy.
Yeah, just use those, right? They're good. But the flip of that is, but what are the few things you should worry about? Having a great volunteer plan giving chair year after, or champion year after year after year after year. That's one thing to focus on. So don't worry about this, but do worry about that. That would really make this a nice sort of complementary program. Anything else that Rochelle that strikes you about what Maggie said?
And I think it's amazing, and you know, hats off to Dan for really starting this, seeding this in a way that worked and obviously worked well and put the foundation in place, and Maggie and her team and Jeff Stone. I mean, that's amazing. And it's real. I mean, it's not, okay, let's think about it. It really happened, and the success is amazing. So congratulations. The only thing I would ask everyone on the call, if they have experienced other concerns or challenges, then we would love to hear from you. And just thank you so much, Maggie, for sharing the group.
Excellent.
So the floor is open. Any fears, myths, stumbling blocks, molehills that look like mountains?
Would it help if I share how I train my team to make the ask?
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you.
We have a very simple model. It is ultimately begin with the end in mind. Our goal is for a donor to make a commitment that is 25 times their annual gift. That amount of money in our endowment, with the endowment policies that we have, with the math and the financial stuff that I have nothing to do with, that will generate that annual level gift in perpetuity. So our math is 25 times. So that's where we start. For some donors, in particular, our higher total donors, their annual gift is a stretch gift. So sometimes that number is a little big for them. The next ask is, would you consider joining the Total Legacy Circle at $250,000? That would generate an annual gift at the total level in your name and perpetuity. And then the third ask, if there's an objection there, is, would you consider leaving us as a part of your philanthropic plans through your estate? And that's it. We have an intent form, and our job from that point is to steward them. We let them know, especially with revocable gifts, that you can change your mind how you can fulfill this commitment at any point in time. If you end up having a cash moment because your company sold, or you won the lottery, or whatever, I'm happy to change that gift structure in any way that fits your needs. And it's my job to stay in contact with you and steward you along the way. Because at the end of the day, I'd love to ask you for more later if you're not ready to make a bigger gift.
Eve, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Maggie. Hi. I was just curious. You're asking for 25 times their annual gift. So that's putting a lot of folks in that group of 250,000. And I'm just wondering, do you call them Total Legacy Circle? And then do you do special events, or do you acknowledge them in a special way because they are TLC?
Sure, we do. We have a magazine that we produce every year that is our Total Pictorial. Got one around here somewhere. It's a big, thick book. They get their photo in it. If they're giving at the $1 million or more level, they get their photo and a bio and a full page in that book. And that book is sent out to the entire Total Society. So we have a section in that book that identifies our Total Legacy Circle members. They also get a newsletter for donors who have existing endowments. meaning that they make that cash gift during their lifetime. We send them annual fund reports, performance reports on how their fund is doing within our investments. And we send birthday cards, anniversary cards. We steward them in about 7 to 8 touches a year, but a lot of them are also the same touches that we utilize for our total society. So it's less of a duplication of effort.
Great.
But we are looking at what we should do from an event standpoint. Our total society events are very big and established. So
Yeah.
doing more events, it's kind of ill-advised. We're looking at that in the next 2 to 3 years as we finish out this 5-year initiative to grow our endowment. But right now, we don't have stewardship events directly. We want to be mindful of their investment as well and not spend too much money on it. Good question.
Yeah, other fears that get in the way of doing plan giving.
I just have a question.
Sure.
How do you discover more people, or is it just based off of your total donors?
That's a great question. We have, on average, I'm gonna get these numbers a little bit wrong, but just roll with me. We process around 55,000 gifts annually in our community. So if we look and we know that some donors make multiple gifts, but let's just say that that's 55,000 donors. How do you prioritize all of those donors? Because at the end of the day, the beauty of it is anyone can make a plan gift. It doesn't have to be somebody with wealth. Some of your good targets are going to be your loyal donors who've been giving for the longest time. So that was one of the things that was an overwhelm button for me when I got into this position. Like, where do I start? You start with propensity and capacity, those two things. So for us, our prospect pool is about 2,500 people. It is a combination of our board leadership. For us, we have a lot of corporate positions on our board that are folks who are representing their companies. It's not necessarily personal, it's professional. So those are folks that we're probably not going to put higher on our list to have initial plan giving conversations with. We've got to build a relationship with them first. The second is our total society, and we prioritize it by gift level, the amount of money that they're giving. And then the third group, and that right there is about 1,000 conversations. So we're about 300 in on those 1,000 at this point. The third group that we target are our leadership level donors, which we consider $1,000 or more, who have been giving consistently for 20 plus years. They've been writing you a check for making a payroll deduction for 20 years. That tees them up for a really great conversation. So that took that universe down to about 2,500. And we also prioritize them according to, we have other volunteers besides Jeff. He recruited a committee, and their role is to help open doors so we can have conversations. So we prioritize it according to what relationships they have. We give them a list and, hey, can you open the door to this person? And it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. We are 15 minutes toward the end of the session, so we can take like another 1 or 2 questions and then go on to the last slide.
Hey, I have a quick question. I'm in Utah with United Way of Northern Utah, and it's just getting a little challenging with we just started our Tocqueville giving program, and we already have donors who do give at that level anyway, but we're just trying to make it extra special, like a little inauguration of sorts. But it is getting difficult to find like a spokesperson or a chair because we have a lot of donors who don't want to be known for their wealth or for their giving. So that is one of our obstacles. Can you help us with that?
I would look at, I would first look at your donors who have, do you have a list of donors that have made plan gifts, or are you starting from scratch?
Well, for planned gifts, we haven't touched on that yet.
Right.
Because I was hired to do that major gift effort, and we're doing good. When it comes to like the Tocqueville level gifts, we'd love to have a Tocqueville chair like on our fundraising board committee. We'd love to have that person like an executive role, like a volunteer buy-in. And although we are asking a few people for those Tocqueville level gifts, so far the ones that were like have been as prospects to us or in our minds to maybe reach out, hey, would you be Tocqueville leadership, or would you consider being a Tocqueville leader, and giving us names or like, referrals, opening those doors for us, with us, making impact in the community for good. We're just getting a lot of I wouldn't say no's, but it's not very favorable is what I'm trying to say. So I guess they just don't want to be known. They say, like, no, we don't want our names on things, or no, don't say it was me, or please, this is anonymous. So I don't know. I feel like I'm saying the same words again and again, but if you could help us, that is our challenge right now, just to find that buy-in, that one volunteer who does give at that level and willing to fight for us at the table too, and in the community.
I'm fortunate enough to I walked into a program that was built for me, so I have not had that challenge. But I bet Dan Dunne has some wisdom he can share, because he asked our first volunteer.
And I'm happy to work with you directly offline if that would be helpful to you. We do that mentoring, and it'd be exciting to work with you if I can be of help to you, moving in that direction. But remember, every no brings you closer to a yes.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of asking people. Some other criteria would include who's excited about the mission, really excited, who's good at relationships with people. And so you're like the coach or the manager, you're trying to spot talent out there. And so you ask some other staff members, you ask some volunteers, who do you think, who are the winners? Who are the champions? Who gets excited about this work of the mission of United Way? And some people are sales oriented, relationship oriented, have the excitement and the enthusiasm, and can build a team. And it begins with one person and it multiplies from there on. But asking people and talking with people and listening to people, and one of your jobs is you're trying to spot talent, and it takes time. And think about, every no brings you closer to yes, and you've got to keep making the asks. If you don't, for the money or for to volunteer, it just happens when you do it. So that's exciting. So happy to help you offline if I can be helpful to you.
Yeah, I'll just add that I did have that issue, and I agree with everything that Dan has said in terms of spotting talent, and to keep trying. Obviously that will work. And I think the only other thing I would add is that the difference in making a change in the community, I think, sparks some interest in terms of motivation for changing that culture. In other words, it's kind of the selflessness of, it's not just about me, it's about what change is going to happen in the community. And I think the people that are so engaged in the community and care about others will rise to the occasion, because they see the difference and they want to make the difference. So, if I can be helpful in some time, offline too, happy to share. And I think we're kind of running out of time. So if we can go to the slide on dealing with the challenges, Carol, that would be great.
Could I just add one more thing, Rochelle?
Of course.
For Anna, I would just also say to look at a person who is needing to perhaps get a little visibility in the community, who fits obviously all the things that Dan mentioned and Rochelle mentioned, but maybe there's somebody who's in a corporate position or that has their own business that is looking for some visibility and might be interested in getting out there a little bit more.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I appreciate it.
One last thing, Anna, people don't want to ask for money, but being a Tocqueville champion doesn't necessarily involve asking for money. That's the staff's job. And so to be real clear with people, and I really love what Rochelle said about United Way is a means to an end. The end, and what you're really a champion for, is a better community. And all you have to do is be passionate about those results, and the United Way is a great way to get there. And then staff will come and ask for the money. And because I found that in all walks, folks don't want to make the ask. The other stuff they're okay with. And just make that clear up front. Oh,
Right,
sorry.
okay. That does make sense. Thank you for all that information. It was really helpful.
Cool.
Sure.
Can I just add one thing?
Of course.
You have the most amazing resource in your state. Her name is Rebecca Dunstan.
Oh, yeah.
And she is the president and CEO of the Children's Center of Utah. She was a United Way person, and I'm sure she would be very happy to chat with you about your challenges and help you.
Wow.
Wow,
Awesome.
thank you so much. I wrote her name down. I wrote all the things down. I
Yep.
really appreciate it. Thank
She
you.
is one of the most giving people I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
Super smart.
Super smart. Yep.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's
Well,
awesome.
in the interest of time,
Sorry.
I just want to say thank you, but also, hey, this shows the power of United Way and United Way Next. I mean, you see it here today. So we just want to sum up on how to address challenges like we did today. We learned from each other, from other local United Ways, and certainly alums and everyone who's in the system. In terms of plan giving, we're framing it as get to know your donors better. I mean, that's really the kingpin in terms of moving relationships forward. Jeff, can I turn to you for the next two?
Yeah, obviously to keep it simple, sir. Sorry, that wasn't meant to be patriarchal, but so one thing I didn't mention about plan giving, and I really do think we should do this in the off season when we get a whole bunch of people who are at small United Ways who don't have enough staff to even come to this because of the people don't make a decision about a planned gift over the course of days or weeks. They make a decision about a planned gift over years. And so you need to drop something in front of them every year, a couple times a year, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. Like, oh yeah, right. I'm so glad I saw this because we're meeting with the lawyer. I actually called the guy. He was one of our campaign chairs one year. He said, oh, Jeff, that's so funny you called. We're seeing the lawyer next week. Thank you for reminding me. I get a little letter that says we've done a $250,000 life insurance policy. So it's little things and consistent. It's planting the seed over and over and over again. And then the design thinking world is just what one thing can you do? Now we do have 3 things up here, 3-point goals, but what one tiny thing can you do? And then just see how it goes. Have one conversation or pick 3 leadership donors in the next 2 weeks during the campaign. Just talk to them. They're the easiest going people. Just ask them about plan giving. Those 3, have 3 different people do it, and then get together over a cup of coffee and say, how'd it go? That's the process. Tiny steps, think it through what you learned, take another tiny step. And of course, call Carol and Dan and Ed John and the rest of the United Way Next team. And there are answers to everything you could possibly know to get started with the plan giving program.
Yeah, I'll just add a big thanks and just talk about some of the resources. There are great materials on the United Way Next website. Dan mentioned the mentor match. Happy to do that. Carol can put you in touch with folks. United Way also offers free will partnership, which is more of a kind of tech approach to plan giving. And If there's anything else you'd like to receive, you can be in touch with us after the session. And just a big thanks to everyone.
Well, this has been great. I just want to start by saying thanks to Rochelle and Jeff, Denise, Dan, and Maggie, and Eve for all of your input and thoughts. This has been just a wonderful opportunity to really remind even myself, because United Way Next is obviously interested in these types of gifts. Maggie has generously offered that if anyone is interested or wants copies of information that she may have shared today, that I can provide you with her email. You will receive a follow-up email from me tomorrow with the recording link for those who didn't make it. Hopefully they'll have a chance to listen in, and in there I will include Maggie's contact information. And although Anna's already jumped off, you know, this is a great example of a very rich network of people. And so I want to make sure all of you know I'm available through United Way Next to make connections to people like Eve and Rochelle and Denise and Jeff and Dan, who serve as our mentors. And they are so well connected with others, people in the network that can support you, people like Maggie, who are actually still working at the United Way, and others across the country who may have a smaller United Way that feels like it's more appropriate than maybe a $100 million campaign, right? So we just want to make sure you all feel supported in this, and also mention that we do have another session coming up on Thursday, December 5th. It sounds like it's far away, but you know, November's coming up here pretty quick. So we'd encourage you to register. I'll include that in the follow-up information that gets sent out tomorrow. And we'll look forward to seeing you again at one of our United Way Next sessions. So thanks to everybody again for being here, and we hope that you have a great weekend ahead.
Thank you, everyone.
Take
See
care.
everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.